Welcome to Ahmed's World Time Trek. In this video, we'll be exploring Napoleon's time in Valence and his essays. In September 1785, Napoleon was commissioned into the prestigious Company d'Automne S of the 5th Brigade, 1st Battalion, Regiment de la Fère, stationed in Valence. At 16, he was one of the youngest officers and the only Corsican with an artillery commission in the French army. Napoleon recalled his time in Valence as financially challenging, often skipping meals to afford books. He received some support through charity, and as first consul, he later repaid a cafe owner who had treated him to coffee in Valence. He was attentive to expenses but still managed to command respect from others. During this period, Napoleon avidly read and took detailed notes on a wide range of books, including histories, political works, and plays. He also continued dancing lessons, recognizing the importance of social skills for an officer. In 1808, he helped his former dancing master, who had fallen into destitution, by finding him a job. It was at Valence on April 26, 1786 that Napoleon wrote his first surviving essay about the right of Corsicans to resist the French. He had finished his schooling, so it was written for himself rather than for publication, an unusual pastime for French army officers of the day. Celebrating Pauli's 61st birthday, it argued that laws derived either from the people or from the prince and for the sovereignty of the former, concluding, "The Corsicans, following all the laws of justice, have been able to shake off the yoke of the Genoese, and may do the same with that of the French." Amen. 71. It was a curious, indeed treasonous, document for an officer in the French army to write, but Napoleon had idolized Pauli since his school days, and from the ages of 9 to 17 he had been largely alone in France, recalling an idealized Corsica. Napoleon was a writer-monk, penning around 60 essays, novellas, philosophical pieces, histories, treatises, pamphlets, and open letters before the age of 26. Taken together, they display his intellectual and political development, tracing the way he moved from a committed Corsican nationalist in the 1780s to an avowed anti-Palist French officer, who by 1793 wanted the Corsican revolt to be crushed by Jacobin France. Late in life, Napoleon called Pauli a fine character who neither betrayed England nor France but was always for Corsica, and a great friend of the family who had urged me to enter into the English service. He then had the power of procuring me a commission, but I preferred the French because I spoke the language, was of their religion, understood and liked their manners, and I thought the start of the revolution as a fine time for an enterprising young man. He also claimed, with perhaps less truth, that Pauli had paid him the great compliment of saying, "That young man will be one of Plutarch's ancients." In early May 1786, aged 16, Napoleon wrote a 2-page essay entitled On Suicide, which mixed the anguished cry of a romantic nationalist with an exercise in classical oratory. "Always alone and in the midst of men, I come back to my rooms to dream with myself, and to surrender myself to all the vivacity of my melancholy," he wrote. "In which direction are my thoughts turned today? Toward death." He was then prompted to consider, since I must die, should I not just kill myself? "How far from nature men have strayed," he exclaimed, echoing a classic romantic trope. Exhibiting a Hamlet-like combination of arrogance and self-pity, he then mixed in some self-indulgent philosophizing with Rousseauian Corsican nationalism. "My fellow countrymen are weighed down with chains, while they kiss with fear the hand that oppresses them. They are no longer those brave Corsicans who a hero animated with his virtues, enemies of tyrants, of luxury, and vile courtesans. You Frenchmen," he continued, "not content with having robbed us of everything we held dear, have also corrupted our character. A good patriot ought to die when his fatherland has ceased to exist. Life is a burden to me, because I enjoy no pleasure and because everything is painful to me." Like most tortured young teenagers attracted by romantic hyperbole, Napoleon decided not to kill himself, but the essays give us a glimpse into his evolving sense of self. His essays tended to be written within the classical conventions of the day, filled with exaggerated bombast and rhetorical questions, and in them he began to hone the literary style that was later to characterize his proclamations and speeches. At the age of 17, Napoleon's religious views started to coalesce, and they did not change much thereafter. Despite being taught by monks, he was never a true Christian, being unconvinced by the divinity of Jesus. He did believe in some kind of divine power, albeit one that seems to have had very limited interaction with the world beyond its original creation. Later he was sometimes seen to cross himself before battle, and, as we shall see, he certainly also knew the social utility of religion. But in his personal beliefs he was essentially an Enlightenment skeptic. In September 1780, aged 11, he had been given a public oral examination, during which he was asked to expound upon Christ's 4 major miracles and was questioned on the New Testament. He later recalled of that test, "I was scandalized to hear that the most virtuous men of antiquity would be burned in perpetuity because they did not follow a religion of which they had never heard." When a priest had offered his services to help him through his father's death, the 15-year-old Napoleon had refused. Now, in another unpublished paper, he attacked a Protestant minister from Geneva who had criticized Rousseau and accused Christianity of permitting tyranny because its promises of an afterlife detracted from man's desire to perfect this life by insisting on a government designed to lend assistance to the feeble against the strong, and by this means to allow everyone to enjoy a sweet tranquility, the road to happiness. Only the social contract, that is, agreement between the people and state authority, could secure happiness. Alongside that 15,000-word treatise, Napoleon wrote The Hare, the Hound, and the Huntsman, a short comic fable in verse form echoing La Fontaine, and featuring a pointer called Caesar who is shot by a huntsman just before he is about to kill a hare. The last couplet goes, "God helps those who help himself. I approve of that idea myself." Napoleon's next surviving piece of prose is only 1 page long. Dated Thursday, November 22, 1787, and written from the Hôtel de Cherbourg, on what is today the Rue Vauviliers off the Rue Saint-Honoré in Paris, which he was visiting to pursue the Pépinière affair. It was entitled A Meeting at the Palais Royal. The private note, written for himself, chronicles his encounter with a prostitute he picked up in that notoriously louche area of central Paris, a neighborhood of gambling houses, restaurants, and bijouterie shop. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for future videos on Napoleon.